Now, let's begin. The monsoon rain drummed against the tin roof of the training compound like 1,000 restless fingers. Gordon Black stood in the observation tower, watching his latest class of recruits struggle through their fifth consecutive hour of mud drills. 42 candidates had started the 12-week program. 37 remained. The attrition rate was exactly where he wanted it. At 41, Gordon had spent half his life in special operations. His weathered face bore the map of a dozen conflicts across 3 continents. The scar running from his left temple to his jaw was a souvenir from Somalia. The slight limp in his right leg came courtesy of Afghanistan. But it was the 3 years he'd spent in the Amazon basin that had truly shaped him, transforming a soldier into something else entirely, a jungle predator with a tactical mind. The Special Forces Jungle Warfare School occupied 18,000 acres of dense rainforest in southern Colombia, technically on loan from the Colombian government, but functionally autonomous. Gordon had built it from nothing 7 years ago after retiring from active duty. The military brass liked having a place to send their problem children, the ones too aggressive for conventional units, but too valuable to discharge. Gordon liked having test subjects for his theories on unconventional warfare. His satellite phone buzzed. The number displayed made his jaw tighten. "Martin." "Brother," Gordon answered, stepping away from the window. "Gordon." Martin's voice carried a tremor Gordon had never heard before. His younger brother was a corporate attorney in Medellin, representing American mining interests. Where Gordon had chosen the sword, Martin had chosen the scales. "I need your advice. Off the record. Talk to me. You remember the Tesoro Verde lawsuit? The indigenous land rights case?" Gordon did. Martin had been fighting it for 2 years, representing a consortium of mining companies against local tribes claiming ancestral territory. It was messy, political, and exactly the kind of legal quagmire Martin thrived on. "We won the preliminary injunction 3 months ago. Since then, my co-counsel quit. My paralegal disappeared. Someone slashed my tires. Twice." Martin paused. "Yesterday, I found a photo under my door. Miranda, leaving her yoga class. There was a red circle drawn around her head. Miranda Wilkerson, Martin's fiancée of 6 months. Gordon had met her once, sharp, funny, completely wrong for his brother's buttoned-up world, which meant she was perfect. "Get out," Gordon said flatly. "Tonight. Both of you. I'll arrange extraction. It's not that simple. The mining companies are pressuring me to stay. They're offering triple my retainer if I see this through to final judgment. That's enough to pay off my loans, the house, everything. And Gordon, the law is on our side. We're going to win this legitimately. The law doesn't matter if you're dead. I'm not running from thugs. If I do, it sets a precedent. Every cartel and criminal organization in Colombia will know they can intimidate American lawyers with impunity." Gordon recognized the stubbornness in Martin's voice. It was the same quality that had kept him in law school when their parents died, that had driven him to the top of his firm. It was also going to get him killed. "Then let me send a team. For men, discreet. They'll shadow you and Miranda until this blows over. And advertise that I'm scared? Gordon, I appreciate the concern, but I can handle this. I've hired private security. The police are aware of the threats. I just wanted you to know in case something happens." The line went dead before Gordon could respond. He stood in the darkness of the tower, rain now hammering the windows with renewed fury. Below, his students were being ordered into the obstacle course, the one that ended with a rope climb over a water pit filled with actual piranhas. He'd lost count of how many recruits had quit at that station. Gordon had learned long ago that fear was the greatest teacher. It clarified. It stripped away pretense. In the jungle, hesitation meant death. He'd built his entire curriculum around that simple truth. But Martin had never learned that lesson. His younger brother still believed in systems, in civilization, in the protective power of law and order. Gordon had believed in those things once, too. Then he'd watched a Taliban fighter execute a village elder while a corrupt police chief looked the other way. He'd seen a warlord in Liberia burn a schoolhouse because the teacher had testified against him. The world ran on violence. Law was just the story people told themselves to sleep at night. The satellite phone buzzed again. Different number, same Colombian prefix. Colonel Black. The voice was unfamiliar, heavily accented. My employer would like to speak with you about your brother. Gordon's free hand moved instinctively to the Sig Sauer, holstered at his hip. I'm listening. Not on the phone. Tomorrow, noon, the Café Amanecer in Medellin. Come alone. Who's your employer? Someone who can make your brother's problems disappear. Or make them much worse. The line clicked off. Gordon descended from the tower into the rain. His executive officer, Lieutenant Jacob Dillon, was waiting by the barracks, clipboard in hand. Dillon was 32, former Marine raider, with the kind of square jaw and crew cut that belonged on a recruiting poster. More importantly, he had a gift for reading terrain and people with equal precision. Sir, we've got 3 more dropouts. Candidates 17, 23, and 34. The Piranha tank broke them. Expected. What about the rest? Holding strong. Hagen and Lester are standouts. Mercer's got potential if we can teach him patience. Dillon paused. You look like you've got something on your mind besides recruits. Gordon trusted Dillon as much as he trusted anyone, which meant partial truth. Family issue. I need to make a trip to Medellin tomorrow. You're in command until I return. Sir, Medellin's Cartel territory. If you're going, let me assemble a security detail. Negative. This is off the books. Dillon knew better than to argue. Watcher 6, Colonel. Gordon spent the night reviewing Martin's case files, which his brother had emailed months ago, seeking his opinion on security protocols. The Tesoro Verde lawsuit was straightforward on paper. Mining companies with valid concessions versus indigenous tribes claiming ownership through centuries-old tradition. Martin's legal argument was sound. The concessions had been legally purchased, properly registered, and approved by 3 levels of government bureaucracy. But buried in the exhibits, Gordon found what Martin had missed. The land in question sat atop one of the largest emerald deposits in South America. Conservative estimates put the total value at $800 million. A significant percentage of that wealth was being extracted illegally by the Gillespie cartel, using forced labor and bribing local officials to look the other way. Martin's lawsuit threatened to bring international attention and regulatory scrutiny. If the mining companies won and took possession, the cartel's operation would be shut down overnight. Lorenzo Gillespie ran the most sophisticated criminal enterprise in Colombia. Unlike the flashy cocaine kingpins who'd come before him, Gillespie was a businessman who happened to employ violence as a strategic tool. Emeralds, not cocaine. Legitimate front companies, not obvious money laundering. Political influence purchased wholesale, not retail. And Martin, brilliant, Principal Martin, had put himself directly in Gillespie's crosshairs. At dawn, Gordon boarded the supply helicopter for the 2-hour flight to Medellin. The city sprawled below him, a concrete maze of wealth and poverty stacked on top of each other like a layer cake. The helicopter set down at a private airfield on the city's eastern edge. Gordon had dressed in civilian clothes, khakis, a linen shirt, no visible weapons. The SIG was in an ankle holster. A ceramic blade was sewn into his belt. Café Amanecer occupied a corner in El Poblado, the upscale district where American expats sipped $4 lattes and pretended they weren't living in a narco state. Gordon arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table with sight lines to both entrances. The coffee was excellent. The clientele was exactly what he expected. Yoga instructors, digital nomads, trophy wives spending their husbands mining money. At noon precisely, 2 men entered. The first was muscle, 6'4", 250 pounds, with the flat eyes of a man who'd killed often and slept well afterward. The second was older, 50 maybe, wearing a tailored suit that cost more than Gordon's annual salary. Silver hair swept back from a widow's peak. Manicured hands that had never held anything heavier than a fountain pen. Colonel Black. I'm Gustavo Underwood, attorney for the Gillespie Family Enterprises. The older man extended his hand. Gordon didn't take it. Underwood smiled and sat anyway. The muscle remained standing. Thank you for coming. You said you could make my brother's problems disappear. Your brother has created significant difficulties for my client's business interests. The Tesoro Verde lawsuit threatens to expose certain irregularities in the emerald trade. My client would prefer to resolve this matter quietly. What are you offering? $5 million transferred to your brother's account in the Cayman Islands. In exchange, he withdraws from the case, citing health concerns. The mining companies find new representation. Everyone moves on. Gordon sipped his coffee. And if he refuses? Underwood's smile never wavered. Colonel, you spent your career in conflict zones. You understand that violence is sometimes a necessary cost of doing business. My client would very much prefer not to incur that cost. But he will, if circumstances require it. You're threatening to kill my brother if he doesn't take your bribe. I'm offering your brother the opportunity to accept a generous settlement and continue living his life. The alternative is less pleasant. For everyone involved. Gordon leaned forward. Tell Gillespie I'll deliver his message. But make sure he understands mine. If anything happens to Martin or Miranda, I'll come for him personally. I don't care about his money, his connections, or his army of sicarios. I will burn his entire operation to the ground. Underwood's smile finally cracked. Threats, Colonel? My client has weathered threats from the DEA, Interpol, and 3 different Colombian presidents. What makes you think you're special? Because I don't care about arrests or treaties or extradition. I care about results. And I'm very, very good at my job. Gordon stood and walked out. The muscle moved to intercept him, but Underwood raised a hand. Let it go, Floyd. The colonel thinks he's still fighting a war. He'll learn differently soon enough. Gordon made it 3 blocks before his satellite phone buzzed. Jacob Dillon, his voice tight with controlled panic. Sir, you need to see this. Someone just sent a video to your personal email. Christ, sir. It's bad. Play it. Static, then shaky camera footage. A concrete room, water-stained walls, a single chair in the center. Martin was tied to the chair, his face already swelling from recent blows. His dress shirt was torn, blood staining the white cotton. Miranda knelt beside him, bound and gagged, her yoga clothes filthy with mud. A figure moved into frame. Lorenzo Gillespie himself, though Gordon had only seen him in surveillance photos before. Tall, athletic despite being in his mid-40s, with the kind of charisma that probably made him popular at country club fundraisers. He was wearing jeans and a polo shirt, like he was about to tee off at the 9th hole. Gordon Black. Gillespie's English was perfect, accent-free. Your brother tried to sue us. He thought American law would protect him here. He was wrong. I wanted you to understand what happens when people interfere with my business. Gillespie pulled a pistol from his waistband, a chrome-plated 9mm that caught the overhead light. Martin's eyes went wide. He tried to speak through his broken jaw, but only a wet gurgle emerged. No. Gordon's voice was barely a whisper. The shot was thunderous in a confined space. Martin's head snapped back. Miranda's scream was muffled by the gag. Gillespie turned to the camera. You threatened to come for me personally, Colonel. Please do. I'll add you to my collection. He fired again. Miranda slumped against the chair. The video cut to black. Gordon stood in the middle of a Medellin sidewalk, surrounded by morning shoppers and tourists, and felt something fundamental tear loose inside him. The civilized part, the part that had filed after-action reports and followed rules of engagement and tried to operate within systems. That part died with his brother. What remained was older, colder. A predator with nothing left to lose. He walked back to the cafe. Underwood was still there, finishing his espresso. The lawyer saw Gordon's face and actually smiled, mistaking shock for defeat. Colonel, I'm glad you've reconsidered. If you'd like to discuss. Gordon grabbed Underwood by his silk tie and slammed his face into the table. The crack of breaking bone was satisfying. Around them, cafe patrons screamed. The muscle, Floyd Jarvis, reached for his gun, but Gordon was faster. The ceramic blade came out of his belt and went into Floyd's kidney, angled upward. The big man went down hard, arterial blood pumping onto the cafe's tile floor. Gordon leaned close to Underwood, who was choking on his own shattered teeth. Tell Gillespie I'm coming. Tell him to run. Tell him it won't matter. He left them both bleeding and walked out into the Medellin sunshine. By the time police arrived, he was already in the helicopter, flying back to the compound. The war had begun. The 37 remaining recruits were assembled in the main briefing room when Gordon returned. They sat in neat rows on metal folding chairs, the kind that left your ass numb after 10 minutes. The room smelled of sweat, coffee, and the particular musk of young men who'd been pushing themselves past normal limits for 8 weeks straight. Jacob Dillon stood at the front, running through the next day's training schedule, a 40-mile forced march followed by a nighttime navigation exercise through hostile terrain. The recruits took notes, asked questions, behaved like soldiers preparing for a difficult but manageable challenge. They had no idea they were about to become something else entirely. Gordon entered through the rear door. The room fell silent. His students had learned to read his moods, and what they saw now made even the cocky ones sit up straighter. "Change of plans," Gordon said. Lieutenant Dillon dismissed the class except for Hagen, Lester, and Mercer. Those three remain. Confusion rippled through the room, but discipline held. The recruits filed out, leaving only 3 men sitting in the front row. Kenneth Hagen was a former Army Ranger, 30 years old, with the lean build of a distance runner and eyes that never stopped calculating angles and exits. Wade Lester had done 2 tours with Navy EOD, defusing bombs in Iraq until his nerves finally frayed. He'd come to the school looking for redemption, or maybe just a place where his particular brand of crazy was considered normal. Brent Mercer was the youngest at 24, fresh from the Marines, with raw talent that hadn't yet learned patience. Gordon looked at each of them in turn. "What I'm about to tell you stays in this room." "Understood." 3 nods. "My brother was murdered yesterday by Lorenzo Gillespie and the Emerald Cartel operating out of Sector 7. Gordon pulled up a map on the projector screen, showing a 100-square-mile area of rainforest 30 miles north of the compound. Gillespie runs his operation from a fortified compound in the center of this territory. Intelligence estimates he has between 80 and 100 armed men, plus support staff. The Colombian government considers him untouchable due to his political connections." Hagen's hand went up. "Sir, with respect, shouldn't this be a matter for law enforcement? Law enforcement can't touch him. I watched him execute my brother on video. He did it knowing I'd see it, knowing I'd want revenge, and knowing there's not a damn thing the authorities will do about it." Gordon advanced the slide, showing satellite imagery of Gillespie's compound, a cluster of buildings surrounded by razor wire and guard towers. "I'm going to kill Lorenzo Gillespie. I'm going to dismantle his entire organization. And I'm going to do it using the resources of this school." The 3 men exchanged glances. Lester spoke first, his southern drawl pronounced. "Sir, you're talking about murder. That's a line most of us aren't ready to cross. I'm talking about justice. I'm talking about demonstrating that American citizens can't be executed on video without consequences. I'm talking about sending a message that will echo through every cartel, every criminal organization in this hemisphere." Gordon paused. "I'm also talking about making this voluntary. What I'm planning is illegal, dangerous, and likely to end careers if word gets out. Anyone who wants to walk away right now, go. No judgment, no penalties." None of them moved. "Here's what I'm proposing," Gordon continued. "We take the entire class, all 37 recruits currently in the program, and we accelerate their training. 4 weeks of intensive jungle warfare, focused specifically on small unit tactics, survival, and unconventional combat. Then we drop them into Sector 7 with minimal equipment. Their final exam, their diploma, is bringing me Lorenzo Gillespie's head." Mercer's eyes went wide. "Sir, you're going to send rookies against a fortified cartel compound? I'm going to send 40 well-trained soldiers into jungle terrain against an enemy that's grown soft from lack of real opposition. Gillespie's men are thugs with guns. My students will be apex predators." Gordon clicked to the next slide, showing a detailed breakdown of Gillespie's security protocols. The cartel relies on technology, motion sensors, cameras, aerial surveillance. We'll train specifically to counter those systems. They expect threats to come from the government or rival cartels. They won't expect a swarm of invisible ghosts bleeding them dry one guard at a time. Dillon had been silent until now, standing at the back of the room with his arms crossed. "Colonel, this is insane. You're risking not just your career, but the entire program. The school exists because the Pentagon tolerates it. You do this, that tolerance evaporates. The school exists because I built it," Gordon said quietly. "And I'll burn it to the ground if that's what it takes." Hagen stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I'm in. My sister was killed by cartel violence in Juarez. I've been waiting for a chance like this." Lester nodded. "Count me in too, sir. I didn't come here to run obstacle courses. I came here to learn how to fight." Mercer was the last to commit, taking a full 30 seconds to think it through. "If we're doing this, we do it right. No half measures, no mercy." "No mercy," Gordon agreed. Over the next 3 days, Gordon laid out the plan in detail. The recruits would be told they were participating in an extended field exercise, a final test before graduation. Only Hagen, Lester, and Mercer would know the true objective. The rest would figure it out once they were in the field. The training regimen was brutal even by the school standards. Gordon pushed the recruits 18 hours a day, teaching them how to move through jungle terrain without leaving tracks, how to kill sentries silently, how to construct improvised weapons from available materials. He brought in specialists, former CIA operatives who taught surveillance and counter-surveillance, a retired SEAL who ran them through close-quarters combat until their knuckles bled. The recruits grumbled, but they persevered. They were special operations candidates. After all, difficult training was expected. What they didn't know was that Gordon was selecting specific individuals for specialized roles. A former Army medic named Brett Levy was pulled aside for intensive trauma care instruction. A communications expert, Andy Sanderson, was taught how to jam cartel radio frequencies. 3 recruits with sniper backgrounds, Tim Doherty, Aaron Kennedy, and Edward Moore, were given long-range precision training using the latest in night vision and thermal optics. In the evenings, Gordon watched the video again and again. Not the whole thing. He couldn't stomach watching Martin die more than once. But the parts showing Gillespie's face, his mannerisms, the room's layout. He studied every detail, burning them into memory. Gillespie wore a gold Rolex on his left wrist. He favored his right leg slightly when he walked. Old injury, maybe. The walls behind him showed water damage, suggesting the execution took place in a basement or ground floor room of his compound. Gordon also noticed something else. In the background, visible for just 3 frames, was a window. Through it, barely visible, was a distinctive rock formation. 3 pillars of limestone rising from the jungle canopy like fingers. Gordon cross-referenced it with satellite imagery and topographic maps. That rock formation was 2 miles northeast of Gillespie's main compound, near an old mining access road. The execution hadn't taken place where Gordon expected. Gillespie had a secondary location, somewhere off the grid. That changed things. On the 15th day of accelerated training, Gordon called a formation of the entire recruit class. They assembled in the central yard at 0500, still dark, mist rising from the surrounding jungle. "Gentlemen," Gordon began, "in 2 weeks, you will face your final examination. This exam will not take place on school grounds. You will be inserted into hostile territory with minimal equipment and one objective: demonstrate everything you've learned about survival, evasion, and unconventional warfare." He paused, watching their faces. Some excited, some nervous, all attentive. "The rules are simple. You'll be organized into 4-man teams. Each team will be given a sector to operate in. Your mission is to eliminate a high-value target within that sector. The first team to succeed graduates immediately with full honors. The rest continue the exercise until everyone succeeds or the time limit expires." A recruit raised his hand. "Sir, when you say eliminate, are we talking about training targets, or—" "I'm talking about actual combatants. Armed criminals who will shoot you if given the chance. This is not a simulation. This is the real world, and you'll be engaging real threats." The yard went silent. Even the insects seemed to pause. "Anyone who wants out, step forward now. No shame, no penalties. You'll be transferred to the regular training program and graduate with a standard certification." Nobody moved. "Outstanding. Dismissed." Team assignments will be posted tomorrow. As the recruits filed away, Jacob Dillon approached. Sir, you can't seriously be planning to send them into Sector 7 blind. I'm not sending them blind. I'm sending them hungry. There's a difference. They're going to get killed. Some of them might. That's the nature of war. Gordon met Dillon's stare. You signed up to train soldiers, Lieutenant, not nursemaid children. If you have a problem with that, you know where the door is. Dillon's jaw worked, but he said nothing. After a moment, he saluted and walked away. Gordon stood alone in the yard, watching the sun rise over the jungle canopy. Somewhere out there, 30 miles north, Lorenzo Gillespie was probably having breakfast. Probably feeling secure, untouchable, protected by his money and guns and political connections. He had no idea that death was coming. That 40 young men were being forged into weapons with a single purpose. That the jungle itself was about to turn against him. Gordon allowed himself a cold smile. The trap was almost ready. The loadout for each four-man team was deliberately sparse. 1 combat knife per person, 2 days' worth of rations, basic first aid supplies, a compass, and a waterproof map with their designated sector marked. No firearms, no radios, no GPS. Gordon wanted them dependent on skills, not equipment. The recruits had protested at first, until Kenneth Hagan shut them down with a single observation. We're being tested on jungle warfare, not conventional assault. The colonel's seeing who can actually survive out there versus who just talks a good game. That had been 4 days ago. Since then, the training had taken on a different intensity. The recruits seemed to sense they were being prepared for something beyond a normal exercise. The morning runs got faster. The hand-to-hand combat sessions drew blood more often. In the mess hall, conversations turned to tactics and contingencies rather than the usual complaints about training conditions. Gordon watched it all with satisfaction. Fear and uncertainty were revealing character. The weak ones were breaking down, making mistakes. The strong ones were getting harder, sharper. He'd organized them into 10 teams of 3 or 4, each with a mix of skills and experience. Team 1 was led by Wade Lester, with 2 former Rangers and a Marine sniper. Team 2 fell to Brent Mercer, paired with the medic Brett Levy and 2 combat engineers. Kenneth Hagan commanded Team 3, the strongest unit, including Andy Sanderson on communications and 2 Force Recon Marines. The remaining teams were deliberately mixed, some strong, some average, 1 or 2 intentionally weak. Gordon needed to see how they'd perform under real stress, and the only way to do that was to throw them into an environment where failure had permanent consequences. On the morning of Day 19, Gordon gathered his 3 lieutenants, Hagan, Lester, and Mercer, in his office. The room was Spartan, a desk, a filing cabinet, a wall map of the surrounding territory. No photographs, no mementos. Gordon didn't believe in nostalgia. Here's what the rest of the teams don't know, he said, pulling up detailed satellite imagery on his laptop. Sector 7 isn't just hostile territory. It's Lorenzo Gillespie's personal kingdom. The man who runs the emerald trade in this part of Colombia. The man who executed my brother. Mercer's eyes narrowed. So this isn't really a training exercise. It's the most important training they'll ever receive. Real enemies, real stakes, real consequences. Gordon zoomed in on the compound. Gillespie has approximately 90 men under his command. 70 are low-level enforcers, farmers with AKs, former soldiers past their prime, thugs who've never seen real combat. 20 are actual professionals, mostly ex-military or cartel veterans. Then there's Gillespie himself, plus his inner circle of 5 lieutenants. Hagan studied the imagery. Defenses, 2 perimeter fences, razor wire, guard towers at each corner. Motion sensors along the main access roads. Roving patrols with dogs. They've got generators for power, satellite uplinks for communications. It's not Fort Knox, but it's solid. How do we get the recruits to target the right people? Lester asked. If they go in thinking it's a generic exercise, they might hit the wrong targets. Gordon clicked to the next slide. Detailed dossiers on Gillespie and his 5 lieutenants. Each team will be given a specific objective within their sector. The objectives will guide them toward cartel positions. Once they make contact, and realize these aren't training scenarios, they'll adapt. The strong ones will push forward. The weak ones will retreat. Either way, we'll know who deserves to graduate. And if some of them decide to bug out, report what we're doing. Then they fail, and we adjust. Gordon's voice was flat, but I don't think they will. These men came here because conventional military training wasn't enough for them. They want to be tested. They want to prove themselves. We're giving them that opportunity. Mercer leaned back in his chair. Sir, just to be clear, we're using these recruits as a private army to wage war against the drug cartel. If this goes sideways, we're all looking at prison time. Or worse. Correct. And you're okay with that? Gordon met his eyes. My brother was a good man. A lawyer who believed in rules and systems and justice. He thought if he followed the law would protect him. Instead, he was tortured and executed while those rules did nothing. So yes, Mercer, I'm okay with throwing away my career and my freedom if it means Lorenzo Gillespie pays for what he did. The only question is whether you three are okay with it. The silence stretched. Outside, the compound was alive with activity. Recruits running drills, instructors shouting corrections, helicopters ferrying supplies. The machinery of the school Gordon had built, about to be repurposed into something else entirely. Hagen spoke first. I already told you I'm in. My sister's death was never avenged. This is as close as I'll get. Lester nodded. I didn't come back from Iraq just to train weekend warriors. Let's do something that matters. Mercer took longer, thinking it through with the careful deliberation that made him a good tactician. Finally, okay, but we do this smart. No unnecessary casualties on our side. These recruits signed up for training, not a suicide mission. We owe them competent leadership. Agreed, Gordon said, which is why you three will be inserted ahead of the main force. You'll conduct reconnaissance, identify weak points in the cartel security, and position yourself to provide overwatch when the teams move in. The recruits will think you're evaluating their performance. In reality, you'll be keeping them alive while they tear Gillespie's organization apart. He distributed folders containing detailed mission packets. Memorize these. We insert in 5 days. The final week of training was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Gordon pushed the recruits through scenarios that mirrored the environment they'd face in Sector 7. Night infiltration past motion sensors, silent kills against human-shaped targets, evading tracker dogs, constructing hide sites in swampy terrain. Several recruits cracked under the pressure. 2 quit outright, choosing the safety of conventional military careers over whatever madness the colonel was preparing them for. 3 more were quietly recycled to an earlier training class after Gordon determined they lacked the necessary mental fortitude. That left 32 recruits divided into 8 teams. On the evening before deployment, Gordon stood before them in the briefing room one final time. They sat in absolute silence, faces painted with camouflage, gear staged and ready. Tomorrow at 0400, you will be inserted into 8 separate sectors within a 100-square-mile area of contested jungle. Your objective is simple. Identify and eliminate the high-value target within your sector. The first team to succeed earns their diploma. Everyone else continues until mission complete or the 72-hour time limit expires. He pulled up a photograph. Lorenzo Gillespie, smiling at some charity gala, champagne glass raised. This is the ultimate objective. Lorenzo Gillespie, leader of the largest criminal organization in this region. Any team that brings me proof of his death graduates immediately with full honors and a cash bonus of $50,000. The room erupted. Recruits shouting questions, demanding clarification, some looking excited, others horrified. Gordon let the noise continue for exactly 10 seconds, then raised his hand. Silence returned. This is not optional. This is not a training exercise that will be called off if it gets too real. This is your final exam, and the stakes are life and death. Gillespie's organization has murdered civilians, enslaved minors, corrupted government officials, and executed an American citizen on video. He operates with impunity because no one has the courage or capability to stop him. You are about to become the exception. A recruit in the back, Gordon thought his name was Doherty, raised his hand. Sir, what about the Colombian government? Aren't we operating in their sovereign territory? The Colombian government has proven unable or unwilling to address the cartel problem. We're doing what they can't or won't. Any other questions? Silence. Good. Get some sleep. Tomorrow, you become operators. The teams were inserted by helicopter at 0400, each dropped at a different point along the perimeter of Sector 7. Gordon watched from the command center as his students disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness, swallowed by jungle that had claimed the unprepared for millennia. Hagen, Lester, and Mercer had been inserted 6 hours earlier, positioned at observation posts with clear sight lines to the main cartel compound and the 3 known secondary sites. Each carried an encrypted radio for coordination with Gordon, but strict orders not to intervene unless recruits were about to be overrun. The first 12 hours were quiet. Teams moved cautiously through their sectors, conducting reconnaissance, establishing hide sites, beginning to piece together the scope of what they'd walked into. Gordon monitored their progress through a combination of satellite imagery and reports from his 3 advanced scouts. At 1,600 hours, Team 7 made first contact. They'd stumbled upon a cartel checkpoint on a logging road. 3 guards armed with AK-47s, a pickup truck, and a cooler full of beer. The guards were sloppy, more interested in staying cool than maintaining security. The team leader, a former Marine named Joseph Chase, made the call. They waited until dusk, then hit the checkpoint in a coordinated rush. 2 guards died before they could raise their weapons. The third managed to fire a burst into the canopy before a knife took him in the throat. Chase radioed in the contact. Team 7 reporting 3 enemy Kia. We've acquired weapons and a vehicle. Requesting permission to advance toward primary objective. Gordon considered it. Giving them the truck would make them faster, but also more visible. Negative on the vehicle. Strip it for supplies, then disable it and move to your secondary position. Maintain noise discipline. By sunrise on the second day, all 8 teams had made contact with cartel forces. The jungle was turning into a free-fire zone, with recruits attacking supply convoys, ambushing patrol routes, and systematically destroying cartel infrastructure. Gillespie's organization began to panic. Radio intercepts showed confusion and paranoia. The cartel leadership thought they were being hit by a rival organization or a government special forces unit. They never considered the possibility of a swarm of highly trained individuals operating without centralized command. The beauty of Gordon's plan was its distributed nature. Each team operated independently, pursuing their own objectives. There was no command structure for the cartel to decapitate, no supply lines to cut. The recruits lived off the land and moved like ghosts. By the 3rd day, Gillespie had lost 23 men. His compound was effectively under siege, guards too terrified to patrol beyond the perimeter fence. Morale collapsed. 3 guards deserted, fleeing into the jungle. 2 were found by Team 4 and killed. The 3rd made it to a village and tried to buy passage out of the region. Local villagers who'd suffered under Gillespie's rule for years beat him to death and hung his body from a bridge. Gordon received word from Hagen on the morning of the 4th day. Colonel, we've identified Gillespie's position. He's holed up in the primary compound with his remaining security force, approximately 15 men. But there's a problem. Talk to me. He's got hostages. Looks like a dozen villagers, probably insurance against an assault. If we go in hard, people die. Gordon had expected this. Gillespie was a survivor, which meant he'd use every advantage. Can your team get eyes inside the compound? Negative. Security's too tight. We need to breach the perimeter, and that would alert everyone. Then we make him come to us. Gordon pulled up his tactical map. There's an old mining road 3 clicks northeast of the compound, near those limestone formations. Gillespie used it to transport emeralds. If we cut off his remaining supply routes and make enough noise, he'll try to evacuate using that road. We'll be waiting. And the hostages? Teams 2 and 6 will create a diversion on the western perimeter. When Gillespie's guards respond, Team 3 slips in and extracts the hostages. We'll need perfect timing and a lot of luck. Luck's not a strategy, sir. No, but it's all we've got. The operation launched at 2,200 hours. Teams 2 and 6 hit the western perimeter with everything they had. Improvised explosives constructed from stolen cartel materials, sustained small arms fire, even a Molotov cocktail through one of the guard towers. The noise was tremendous, designed to sound like a major assault. Inside the compound, Gillespie's guards responded exactly as Gordon predicted. They massed on the western wall, laying down suppressing fire, calling for reinforcements from the secondary positions. That's when Team 3 moved. Hagen led them through a drainage culvert that ran under the eastern fence, a weakness they'd identified during reconnaissance. For men, moving in absolute silence through ankle-deep water, emerging inside the compound perimeter while all eyes were turned west. The hostages were being held in a storage shed near the main house. 2 guards stood outside, AK-47s at the ready, eyes locked on the firefight happening 100 yards away. They never saw Hagen and Andy Sanderson come up behind them. 2 knife strikes, both guards down, keys taken from one of the bodies. Inside the shed, the hostages were a mess. Malnutrition, dehydration, signs of abuse. An old woman started to scream, but Hagen clamped his hand over her mouth. "We're here to help. American military. Stay quiet, and we get you out alive." They believed him, or at least they wanted to. The hostages shuffled out, moving slowly, Team 3 forming a protective cordon as they reversed course toward the drainage culvert. They were halfway there when someone noticed. A shout in Spanish, then automatic weapons fire stitching the mud near Hagen's feet. "Move!" he roared, shoving the hostages forward. Sanderson laid down, covering fire with a captured AK, while the other 2 team members helped the civilians into the culvert. Bullets snapped past them, close enough to feel the displacement of air. Hagen was the last through, sliding into the water just as a grenade went off behind him. The concussion was deafening in the enclosed space, but the culvert held. They crawled 50 meters through absolute darkness, hostages whimpering and praying, until they emerged on the far side of the compound. Gordon's voice crackled through Hagen's radio. "Team 3 report. Mission success. All hostages extracted, 0 casualties. We're clear of the compound and moving to Rally Point Alpha." "Outstanding. Get those civilians to the village and link up with Teams 4 and 5. It's time for Phase 2. With the hostages gone and his compound under sustained attack, Lorenzo Gillespie did exactly what Gordon knew he would. He ran. At 0300 hours, a convoy of 3 vehicles rolled out of the compound's northern gate. Gillespie's armored Mercedes SUV sandwiched between 2 pickup trucks carrying his remaining bodyguards. They took the old mining road, racing through the darkness, headlights cutting through jungle mist. Gillespie was in the back seat, satellite phone pressed to his ear, trying to arrange helicopter extraction while his driver pushed the Mercedes to its limits on the deteriorating road. They made it 2 miles before they hit the ambush. Gordon had positioned Teams 1, 7, and 8 in a classic L-shaped kill zone, using the terrain to funnel the convoy into a narrowing section of road with steep embankments on both sides. When the first vehicle, a pickup truck with 4 guards, reached the kill zone's apex, Wade Lester triggered the signal. 24 recruits opened fire simultaneously. The pickup's windshield exploded, tires shredded by multiple impacts. The truck lurched off the road and rolled down the embankment, crushing the guards inside. Gillespie's driver slammed on the brakes, trying to reverse, but the trailing pickup had already been disabled by a precisely thrown explosive. The Mercedes was trapped, engine roaring uselessly as bullets sparked off its armored panels. Gordon emerged from the tree line, walking calmly toward the vehicle. Behind him, recruits held their fire, watching their colonel approach the trapped quarry with the inevitability of a closing trap. Gillespie kicked open the rear door and stumbled out, hands raised. His famous composure was gone, replaced by raw animal panic. Wait, I can pay you. Whatever they're offering, I'll double it." Gordon stopped 10 feet away. "You executed my brother on video." Recognition dawned in Gillespie's eyes. "Black. Gordon Black. Jesus Christ, you actually did it. You crazy son of a bitch, you actually..." The shot came from behind Gordon. Brent Mercer, positioned in overwatch with a scoped rifle. The bullet took Gillespie in the chest, dropping him to his knees. Gordon walked over and knelt beside the dying cartel boss. My brother believed in law and order. He thought the system would protect him. You proved him wrong, so I built a better system. Gillespie coughed blood. You can't, government will. The government will thank me for doing what they couldn't. And if they don't, I don't particularly care. Gordon stood up. Your organization is finished. Your men are dead or scattered. Your Emerald operation is being seized by the Colombian military as we speak. You lose. Gillespie's eyes went glassy, fixed on something only he could see. Then he collapsed forward into the mud. Gordon turned to face the assembled recruits. 32 men, mud-splattered and exhausted, weapons held ready, eyes bright with the realization of what they'd accomplished. Gentlemen, Gordon said, you've graduated. The jungle erupted in cheers. The aftermath was surprisingly clean. The Colombian government, presented with evidence of the cartel's atrocities and a gift-wrapped opportunity to claim credit for its destruction, declared the operation a success of their special forces. The American embassy issued a carefully worded statement thanking Colombian authorities for their cooperation in bringing criminals to justice. Gordon School officially had no involvement. The 32 graduates signed NDAs that would bankrupt them if violated, received their $50,000 bonuses, and dispersed to various special operations units around the world. Several were recruited by intelligence agencies who appreciated their unique skill set. Hagen, Lester, and Mercer stayed on as instructors. They'd proven themselves in the crucible, and Gordon trusted them to maintain the standards he'd established. The compound itself underwent renovations. New equipment, expanded facilities, a larger training area. The Pentagon, impressed by the latest graduating class's performance in their subsequent assignments, increased funding significantly. No one asked where those graduates had gained their combat experience. Some questions were better left unasked. Gordon stood in the observation tower 6 months later, watching a new class of recruits struggle through their first week of training. 43 candidates this time, including 2 women who'd made it through the preliminary screening. His satellite phone buzzed. Unknown number, Colombian prefix. Colonel Black. The voice was cultured, confident. My name is Gustavo Reyes. I represent certain business interests in Medellin that were recently disrupted by the unfortunate demise of Lorenzo Gillespie. Gordon said nothing. We wanted you to know that we bear no ill will regarding recent events. In fact, we're impressed. The efficiency, the precision, the message it sent, truly remarkable. We'd like to hire your services. I'm not a mercenary. Of course not. You're an educator, and we'd like to enroll some students in your program. Young men who need the kind of training only you can provide. We'll pay triple your normal rates. Gordon watched his recruits navigating the obstacle course below. Several were already falling behind, unable to keep pace. They'd wash out within the week. I'll send you the enrollment requirements, he said finally. If your candidates meet my standards, we'll talk. Excellent. We look forward to a mutually beneficial relationship. The line went dead. Jacob Dillon appeared at Gordon's elbow, coffee in hand. Sir, was that what I think it was? The cartels are learning. They can't fight us directly, so they're trying to become us. And you're going to let them? Gordon took the offered coffee. I'm going to take their money, put their people through hell, and graduate maybe 1 in 10 if they're lucky. The ones who make it will be too disciplined to go back to random violence. The ones who don't will warn the others what happens when you try to game the system. That's optimistic. That's pragmatic. Gordon gestured at the training ground below. This place exists to forge weapons. I don't particularly care who those weapons point at, as long as they're pointed away from innocence. If cartel soldiers want to become disciplined professionals instead of trigger-happy thugs, I'll help with that. It makes them predictable. Predictable enemies are manageable. Dillon considered this, then nodded slowly. You've changed, sir. 6 months ago, you would have told them to go to hell. 6 months ago, my brother was alive. Gordon drained the coffee. Now I'm just trying to build something that lasts. Something Martin would have been proud of, even if the methods would have horrified him. Down in the yard, A recruit screamed as he failed a rope climb for the third consecutive time. The piranha tank waited below, hungry and patient. Gordon smiled. Some things never changed. The school continued its work semester after semester, graduating operators who went on to serve in conflicts across 3 continents. Its reputation grew, attracting the best and most desperate candidates from militaries worldwide. Gordon Black became a legend in special operations circles. The man who'd built an empire from nothing and used it to wage a successful private war against organized crime. He never spoke about Martin again. The photos remained in a drawer, the video file encrypted and archived. But every graduating class heard the same speech. You're here because conventional training wasn't enough. You wanted to be tested. You wanted to prove yourselves. I'm going to give you that opportunity. But understand, this school has one rule. We take care of our own. Anyone threatens one of ours, the full weight of this organization comes down on them. No mercy, no hesitation, no limits. The recruits always cheered. They thought it was bravado, motivational rhetoric. Gordon knew better. It was a promise. And in the jungle, promises were written in blood.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.